Astor, the main-voiced villain of Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, the Prophet of Doom and Seer who existed long before the events of the game and the memories preceding 100 years prior to Breath of the Wild.
In this two-part collab with Zeltik, we are exploring Astor's backstory and lore based on information provided in-game, but also looking on why he was on the side of darkness in both the World of Ruin, which led to The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, and its sequel, and the new world created in Age of Calamity. If you still haven't finished the game and don't want to be spoiled by chapters 5, 6 and 7, then these two videos are absolutely not for you. If you have finished the game, or specifically the main quest, or live for spoilers, then welcome, as we get into Astor and his possible paths. To keep things simple, Zeltik is exploring Astor's entire life in the Age of Calamity's Terraco world branch, and I'm going into the darkness that is the World of Ruin in the timeline. Link to his video is in the top right card and in the end card of this video. The origins of Astor provided in Age of Calamity are vague, as his character description only details the following in addition to what we know from the game itself, which we will summarize right now. Astor, Prophet of Doom, a seer from a certain small village in Hyrule who plotted to revive Calamity Ganon. He was defeated and subsequently absorbed by the Calamity. It again took its new human giant-like form from Astor. Link and Zelda then dealt with this new threat in Hyrule Castle Sanctum and then the Astral Observatory. Astor was dead in the new world created by Terraco, but in the original World of Ruin, or for the sake of keeping the simple Breath of the Wild's timeline branch, Astor could have survived the Calamity. In other words, he might have impacted the World of Ruin during the Calamity, and still be alive to return and this time serve the true source of malice and hatred, the resurrected Ganondorf, and through him demise his curse. Let's begin our exploration in the Hero of the Wild's timeline by creating a timeline of Astor's unknown path, which might lead all the way to Breath of the Wild's sequel. To do this, we'll analyze his role based on his title and the first line of his description from Age of Calamity. Astor, Prophet of Doom, a seer from a certain small village in Hyrule who plotted to revive Calamity Ganon. Though the Japanese version, translated thanks to Source Gaming, goes like this, and that is the one we'll follow from here. Astor, devotee of Calamity Ganon, a fortune teller who lived in a small village in Hyrule. Entranced by the power of Calamity Ganon, he plotted for Ganon's return, but was defeated by Link and his allies and absorbed by the Calamity. Fortune teller, you say? Where have you heard that before? Well, both in Masterworks and Creating a Champion, in regards to the Calamity Ganon prophecy which King Rome told in his retrospective memory. In other words, Astor is the fortune teller who delivered the prophecy of Calamity Ganon's return, the Guardians and the Divine Beasts. We're building our character, I mean villain. But before we get to his home village, what about his name? Astor, which we confirmed to be Asutoro in the Japanese version, is of Gallo-Roman or Khitan origin, Astur, and means hawk, though it can also be an acronym for Pasta or Astro, or possibly both of them. Pasta meaning shepherd in Latin, and deriving from the word pascere, to lead or to pasture, or in Christian terms a minister of his congregation to a higher authority, namely God. A description which fits Astor, as his highest authority is none other than Calamity Ganon. Then we have Astro, which we can get by switching the placement of the last two letters in Astor's name. This one is also of Latin, or more specifically ancient Greek origin, astrid, namely that of star or celestial bodies, otherworldly elements, which explains his sophisticated giant ancient core, which depicts constellations which we recognize from astrology and zodiac pseudoscience. These are also found on the Sheikah Towers and within the Astral Observatory underneath Hyrule Castle Sanctum. The constellations have been depicted in detail by Rinkuto, which you can check in his video right here, and has been theorized to point to either the past or the predictions of the future, much like horoscopes in our own world. No doubt, Astor had interest in the otherworldly, and thus also the forbidden, studying constellations of stars in the sky, but in which small village of Hyrule was he born? His interest for the sky and constellations could point to the Sheikah of Kakariko. But if that was the case, then he would have been recognized by Impa, which he wasn't. It could also be Hateno, but that is Link's home village, and Astor and Link didn't know each other. That leaves us with 4 other possible Hylian villages scattered in western and eastern Hyrule, outside the densely populated central Hyrule with its towns and villages. From north to south we have Tabanta, Goponga, Deya and Lurelin. All of these are possible, but out of the 4 I would like to point out Lurelin. only Hylian village outside of Hateno which was not laid to ruins during the Calamity. Or why? The Bridge of Hylia was never destroyed during the Calamity, as if it was, it would have been impossible to rebuild it without stonemasons, a skill which was lost during the Calamity. In other words, Guardians could have easily walked over the bridge and through the Faron province, and some did, as we find one lone Guardian Stalker at the shore of Faron Sea, but nothing close to Lurelin village. And most importantly, there are no major characters that we know of from Lurelin in The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild or Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity. Could it indeed be that it was Astor's home village and that it was spared by the imprisoned Ganondorf in return for his lengthy and loyal service to the Calamity? Possibly, and especially if he has been playing around with the dark arts, magic or sorcery. Something he would know a thing or two about if he studied the local barbarians or Zonai ruins. Even so, we'll not disclose the other settlements, though it is suspicious that Lurelin is the only unfortified Hylian settlement from 100 years ago that was left standing in Breath of the Wild.
It isn't directly implied, but with the Japanese description detailing that Astor was a fortune teller from a small village in Hyrule, plus the English title Prophet of Doom, together imply what Breath of the Wild left unclear. At one point during Astor's youth, the imprisoned Ganondorf, through his growing calamity underneath the ground, was able to send a message to a person who had rejected his Hylian identity and embraced one of the old Gerudo kingdom and the ancient Sheikah tribe and their technology. The two races that had been subjugated the hardest throughout the long history of the Kingdom of Hyrule and its royal family. Astor was the perfect candidate for Ganon, as he was a traitor to his own people, and an ancient Sheikah and distant past Gerudo wannabe who was obsessed with the Calamity, which took place 10,000 years ago, and Ganon. Likely not long after turning of age, during the reign of King Rome Bosphoramus Hyrule, Astor was blessed with a prophecy of incoming doom from Ganon through his core crystal ball orb, which allowed him to see the future of the Calamity, detailing the incoming Calamity and the plan to use the ancient Sheikah Guardians and the divine beasts against the kingdom to wreak havoc on Hyrule. Even so, Astor most likely didn't know of Ganondorf, which Urbosa did, as he served his own Lord Ganon. Realizing that his mission was to set the greatest trap in the history of Hyrule, Astor set course for Hyrule Castle to become its imposter. After gaining trust as a fortune teller, he shared to King Rome his prophecy of the upcoming Calamity, the first one in 10,000 years. Astor uttered, "The signs of a resurrection of Calamity Ganon are clear, and the power to oppose it lies dormant beneath the ground." King Rome, realizing that Armageddon was likely to hit during his lifetime, heeded this prophecy, ordered the end of the near 10,000-year-long ban on ancient Sheikah technology and weaponry, and ordered to locate as many Guardians as possible and the 4 divine beasts by excavating big areas of land across Hyrule. The false prophet had delivered his message, and for the next decade likely remained inside the castle, overlooking how the grand plan and trap materialized when the divine beasts and Guardians were unearthed. We also know that the Queen of Hyrule, with her divine power, passed away not long after this prophecy, and with it, all pressure was placed on the young Princess Zelda. Perhaps the Queen realized that something was wrong and removed swiftly and without suspicion by Astor. This is speculation, obviously. Even so, Zelda's failures to awaken her dormant power must have been of great amusement to the fortune teller. This is also where the solid thread is cut in the world of ruin, and any traces of the fortune teller disappear, as Astor was never remembered by name or as a shameful traitor and false prophet, and never blamed for working for the imprisoned Ganondorf. His prophecy was, after all, correct. It is just that the king and his royal court didn't know that the prophecy was deliberately planted by Ganon himself. So where was the fortune teller when the imprisoned Ganondorf finally unleashed the Calamity? Hyrule Castle, but not necessarily. Yes, he was the false prophet and imposter among the Hyrulean royal court, which made him safe from the corrupted or possessed by Ganondorf Guardians. King Rome mentioned that the people residing inside the castle at the moment of the Calamity lost their lives. At the same time, he wasn't needed there. He had no specific powers that could aid his master during the Calamity, unlike the ones he was granted in Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity. On top of that, the likelihood of failure was not there, as long as the princess had yet to awaken her power. Both Astor and Ganondorf must not have seen her as a threat, as Ganondorf's target was Link, who was wielding the Master Sword. In this case, we want to present 3 scenarios, and all tie to Astor's undying loyalty to Ganondorf, as seen with the cloak with the Gerudo crest, a tribe which Ganondorf had once been king of, and Gem of Malice on his forehead, symbolizing his new role as. Number 1. He was eventually betrayed by Ganondorf and perished during the Calamity. Keep in mind, much like in Age of Calamity, Ganondorf had no longer need of a fortune teller or prophet of doom when the guardians and divine beasts were under his control. He had unlimited power. As such, Astor could have already left the living before Zelda's awakening in front of Fort Hateno. Not very pleasing compared to his involvement in Age of Calamity. So let's look at the next possibility. Number 2. The confrontation against the fully awakened Princess Zelda. Realizing that the one Princess Zelda had finally unlocked her power and was heading for the scourge of Hyrule Castle, Astor may have made an effort to confront her. Or actually no, since without the powers granted by Ganondorf to him in Age of Calamity, then there is no way that Astor would be able to stand against the infuriated awakened Blood of the Goddess and her Bow of Light. That is why our option 3 is more interesting. Since if Astor indeed was from Lurelin, he might have just spent the entire Calamity there, leaving Hyrule Castle a few days prior to visit his home village and staying there until it was too late to stop Zelda from reaching the Sanctum and unleashing her 100-year grip on the Calamity. Which leaves us with 2 options for Astor. Either live his life somewhere in Hyrule until dying 70 years later, or conserving himself with dark magic, much like Link was kept in stasis to be around when Zelda would eventually drop her hold on the Calamity. This way, Astor may have been a witness from the shadows of Link's awakening from the Shrine of Resurrection, his single-handed attack on the Yiga clan hideout and Master Koga's demise, destruction of the 4 Blights, and liberation of the Divine Beasts, and finally, the defeat of Calamity Ganon and Dark Beast Ganon. If still around, Astor must have felt devastated, like the Kingdom of Hyrule a century prior, but maybe this was all part of their Plan B. Since, let's remember, the imprisoned Ganondorf in the world of ruin is behind the malice. All of it in the world of Breath of the Wild, and half of it in Terraco's new world. The all-seeing eye of the possessed guardians. Ganondorf is Astor's master, and has been for over 100 years. If Astor is still alive, then his wait could be rewarded with him joining the King of Evil himself.
Ganondorf, who has caused devastation as Ganondorf and Ganon across the entire timeline, from Ocarina of Time to Breath of the Wild sequel. Serving directly with him, doing his bidding by getting revenge after being imprisoned for tens of thousands of years, and perhaps even aiding him in reclaiming his former strength and form, will be the greatest of honors to Astor. Personally, we would love to see Astor by Ganondorf's side. Perhaps he could take command of the Yiga clan, who after the loss of their dear master Koga, demand a hero of Hyrule's blood. Astor could return again in Breath of the Wild 2, and he could be far more menacing than the naive puppet that he was in Age of Calamity. Ganondorf's agent to do all the dirty work with an army of loyal Yiga foot soldiers and blade masters.
An incredible conflict that could result in an even better storyline for Astor, especially with the return of Prince Sidon, Yonobo, Tabor and Gerudo Chief Riju from their battles in Terraco's new world. But what about Astor's life and origins in that world? For that, be sure to check out my part of this collab, where we go over Astor's storyline and origins as presented in Age of Calamity.
What do you think of all of this? Will Astor stand by Ganondorf's side in Breath of the Wild sequel? We want to see your opinions in the comment section down below. And be sure to check out Zeltik's video within the new world of Terraco. But now, be sure to leave a like under this video, subscribe and press that notification bell, and again for all notifications to not miss any upcoming Zelda and Age of Calamity videos. A big thanks goes to all our Patreon supporters who made this timeline possible. That goes in particular for our royal producer Charles Shash. Anyway, that's all for now, but please enjoy one or both of these 2 awesome videos.